this is my mod pack, and it's what I consider to be the most difficult version of Minecraft.
There'll be tons of blights.
And not because it's gonna take you forever to beat it, but because the mobs are incredibly powerful.
Oh my god.
And to complement the new strength, the mobs also increased in number, so they now attack you in massive hordes. And if you hadn't already noticed, the monsters spawn with gear too, like a lot of gear, on top of a whole bunch of other additions that make them absolutely unbearable. So I won't list all of the additions, but I will list all of the difficulty enhancing mods, and you'll also get to see a fraction of all my deaths. And this might look like a lot of mods, but I'll actually be adding more just before I go to the nether, because I can't let this get easy. But if I'm gonna go to the nether, I'm gonna need a plan, so let's make one. So because monsters get stronger over time and already start out super strong, I'm gonna need something to match them. I can take them one-on-one when they're alone, but when they group up, my chance of dying increases exponentially, so I'm gonna need my own team. And I'm not talking about other players, I'm talking about wolves. But before I can get wolves, I have to, play the game and find one. So let's begin. So my first goal was gonna have to be to get a bed, because surviving the night was very impractical. Put simply, I'm weak, they're strong, I die. And while I'm not playing on hardcore, I'd rather not spend much time running back to corpses. So I got all the wool I needed, made my first bed, and tried to sleep. But of course, because the game loves me so much, they woke me up so I could experience the whole night. And as you'd probably guess, it wasn't a very good experience.
Are you serious, bro?
So, I did it all over again the next day, and I got lucky and found an exposed mine shaft that actually had loot for me this time. And by the time I left, I had 3 iron, so I used 1 to make a shield. And after crafting my shield, I decided I would try my luck in a cave, because although they're dangerous, I'm gonna have to go caving eventually. And after spending a little time in the cave, I realized that I'm not ready for this, and so I left. The monsters were too strong, but there was nothing stopping me from getting ores that are at the surface, or from just really shallow caves. And of course there were also structures I could always loot, like this ruined portal where I got my first piece of armor, and then another one where I got a bunch of iron, and made the foolish decision of trying to go back into a cave. So after I got all my stuff back, I was back on the move, and if you're curious, yes, it did take me this long. And after a little while of exploring and gathering some food, I decided I was going to go back into another cave, and as you'd probably expect, didn't go well. And as a matter of fact, I didn't even actually get into the cave this time. The mob saw me and immediately came. So it was at this point that I realized I'm really gonna need those wolves, because I can't even enter a cave by myself. And if I can't get into a cave, I can't get nothing. But luckily for me, after a little while of exploring, I ran into my first batch of wolves. Now when I thought about wolves, I was rethinking about just like massive armies, because I wasn't expecting them to be super strong. But oh man, I couldn't have been more wrong. At least, for now. So I tamed the wolves, and they also had a baby that helped us out for a little bit. And from this point, the game got a whole lot easier. And the good part was that these wolves had somewhat of a brain. They actually knew to run away from creepers. And even if they didn't, they could survive their explosions. So from this point onwards, I could actually fight with mobs. And look at this damage. 5 hearts from 1 hit. And after having some fun, it was time to get back on the move because we were on a mission here. And my main goal now was going to be to find a place to build a house, because now that I had wolves, I could make a house knowing that I wouldn't have to travel to find them. And so the search began, traveling from biome to biome, day to day. Just me and my wolves against the world. It took us a little while, but eventually we did find a place to stay. Or so, we thought we did. This hut that we ran into was pretty well equipped. It already had an enchantment table, but it had one major downside. And that's because they had these blocks outside that could kill my dogs. And as a matter of fact, it actually did kill one of my dogs, and the second one barely survived. So it was pretty clear that I was going to need to find a new house. So I took the important things, and we were back on the road. It didn't take as long to find the next place though. I found this big old plains field, and I decided that this would be my home. And so I began. I wasn't looking for anything complex, I just needed a home base. And so I kept it pretty simple. Some dark oak, some stone bricks, and some glass. And I also added a second floor so I could keep my enchantment table there and some other things. So with my house now out of the way, it was time to move on to what I feared the most, the caves. Now, I had a lot more confidence now because I had my dogs, but make no mistake, I was still going to be very careful. And I had run into a little bit of iron early on, but I knew that if I wanted to get enough for a full set, I was going to have to go deeper. And so I pushed forward. But I quickly found out as I went deeper, that this was not going to be as easy as I thought, even with my wolves. And let's also consider this. When I first found my wolves, the difficulty was around 8, and it's now at 17.4, so it's more than double from what it used to be. So these caves are supposed to be 2 times harder than the caves I already couldn't handle. And it was at that point that I realized I was going to need all my wolves. I couldn't afford to leave anyone behind. So we all got together and began to push further, but it still wasn't easy. The monsters were absolutely brutal. There was little room for error. If I took a hit, I was probably going to lose a lot of health. I didn't have any armor, but you know, that's what I'm here for. And with each death, I came back and learned something new. I was getting further, although it may not look like it here. And even so, knowledge wasn't going to be enough to get me past these guys. And at a certain point, I actually did consider giving up on this cave and just going to find another one. But then I remembered that I had torches, and torches are used for more than just light. They're used to stop the enemies from spawning. And so with my new idea, I went back in. I grabbed my loot real quick and then went up the waterfall, first thinking that I was going to go along a different route. But that idea was very quickly cancelled. So the torch plan was back on. And after finding this new extension to the cave, I knew that I had to go here. Not without dying at least once though. Because you know, I mean, why would the monsters leave me alone for even a second? And so, after coming back down and grabbing my loot, I thought it was over. Glad I had a few followers left. But luckily for me and my dogs, it wasn't a whole lot, so we just cleaned them up. So after getting through all the mobs, I was finally able to go mining to get what I came here for, which was iron. And surprisingly enough, in the deeper parts of the cave, like the deep slate, there were actually only a few enemies. I don't know why though, but it was useful. So we went around the caves, casually collecting our iron. And I actually lost a dog down here, but he died off camera. I almost lost a second one too, but he was smart. So after gathering enough iron, it was time to head back to the surface. Our mission complete. The next step was going to be to look into enchanting, because well, while I could get armor now, I still wasn't quite ready for their massive numbers. And I think now would be a good time to introduce you to one of the mods that's going to speed up my progression. So there's this little thing called the Enchanting Infuser, and what makes it special is that it lets me actually pick out what enchantments I want to have on my tools. So it makes it a lot easier to get what I need, and it removes a lot of the grind that comes with enchanting. But to get it, I was going to need 2 amethyst and also some crying obsidian, neither of which I had. So I was going to have to spend a little more time down in the caves. But I got lucky and came across this mine shaft, so getting the amethyst was relatively easy. And I also came across this really good pickaxe. But the crying obsidian was still going to be a big problem. If I couldn't find it in a chest, I was going to have to break it with the diamond pickaxe, which I didn't have, and I didn't want to go mining for diamonds because that was incredibly dangerous. And I got super lucky because one of the monsters I ended up killing dropped me its diamond pickaxe. So all I had to do from here was just mine some crying obsidian. And then I had everything I needed to make the Enchanting Infuser. But this wasn't going to fix my level issue, because I still had to kill stuff for experience. But I was quickly reminded of why I avoided the monsters.
Oh my goodness.
So from that point I realized I was going to need a different way to get experience. So I settled on just killing animals. And it took me a little while, but eventually I had enough experience for my first enchantment. And then I realized I was going to need even more experience. So I went back out and killed some more animals, and eventually had enough experience to make what I call the Keystone Pickaxe. And I called it that because every block I mined with it would drop me experience, and this thing could mine really fast. So by this point, getting enchantments was going to be all about how much time I was willing to spend digging stone. So of course I put in the work and got my enchantments. Now that I had fully enchanted armor, there's only one thing left to do before I went to the nether, and that was to make it all diamond. So the adventure began to the deepest parts of the world, the Infinity Cave. There are a lot of resources down here, but there's also a lot of enemies, and that's why I got this enchanted armor. So I began collecting diamonds. But if I'm being honest, this mission was rather easy. I think my enchantments made me way more powerful than I thought. So it didn't take me very long to just get what I came for and be out. So once I got all my diamonds, I just dug my way out with me and my wolves. And then we were on our way back home. Since I had my diamonds now, there was nothing left I wanted to do before I went to the nether. I'd gotten dogs, I'd gotten armor, I'd gotten enough diamonds for diamond armor. I was pretty set for the nether. So that was all there was left to do next time I get on. But I'll be saving that for another time. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.